Okay. I don't know how this is gonna go because it's been a little bit since I've done a comic related thing. Um, but sorry, just had to check with something. But yeah, I watched this movie, Wakanda Forever. It's I don't. I should start by saying comic related stuff on the channel will always still be a thing. I just don't want this to be. Well, I guess this is partially a lie because I've been trying to bring it back a little bit, but I don't want this to be like an indication that it's 100% now. Like comic related stuff is gonna show up. I keep playing with my hair. It's gonna show up 100%. It's just this movie is less so. It's MCU. It's an MCU movie, but I feel like this movie is important for other reasons. Um, so I was happy I saw it. I didn't plan on seeing it 100% in theaters, but to I happened to see it the day it got released, so works for me. At least this is relevant when it's gonna come out. I think it'll come out like a couple days after its release. So usually, if you bring out a review in the first week a movie comes out, it's gonna be received decently. Unless you bash the movie, unless the movie's bad, probably not a good idea to do that. But yeah, let's get into it. So I'm gonna talk non-spoiler and then spoiler. I think the spoiler part is gonna be shorter than the non-spoiler because I did this recently with another movie and I realized non-spoiler I think is normally supposed to be shorter, but I end up saying things without saying them and I draw it out to the point where when I get to the spoiler part, I'm just talking about it but in more detail, which doesn't take as long because I don't try to repeat myself. So I might put a timestamp, I might not. Either way, if you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie, don't worry at the beginning. But when I do say, hey, I'm going to start doing spoilers, leave. Get the hell out of here. Also, comment section, don't spoil anything. Try not to. I've said this multiple times, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, I'm going to start out with saying, I know everyone's wondering, is this movie better than the last one? Because there's a big guy missing. If you don't know, I don't think, unless you live under a rock, unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman, who is an amazing person, not just actor, passed away a few years ago. And he plays the Black Panther, who is the main protagonist of the Black Panther movies. Hence the name, duh. But more importantly, jokes aside, this movie does address that. And I think the number one question was, how does it feel without him? It's tough. It's tough. It does the job. It does what it should. And, but I think the second question, which I'm trying to transition to, is how does this compare to the other movie, right? To the first Black Panther movie? Because two things. One, this isn't even called Black Panther. This is called Wakanda Forever, which is interesting. I think it's appropriate. But also, I think it's appropriate for the context that Black Panther has passed. But I will say, watching the movie, if they had called it Black Panther, Wakanda Forever subtitle, I don't think it would have been a bad thing. I think it's out of respect for Chadwick, which I love if that's the case. But if it was for other reasons that may have not, like if they didn't mind the Chadwick thing and didn't see it that way but took other angles, I don't think it'd be necessary. But I'm pretty sure it's because of Chadwick out of respect, so that's fine. But my point was, the second one, how does it compare to the first film? It works without Chadwick, but I think surprisingly, for me, I'll make this very, very clear. For me, I liked this movie more than the first one. And I'll give context. I really liked the first movie. I think the first movie was a good movie. I think it even is a great movie if you look at it from the retrospect of a movie. But as an MCU movie, I think it runs in the same troubles that I'm like, we're doing a lot of, like, if this was, how do I put it? there's an issue I have with MCU movies sometimes, that I compare them to that problem of when you have a shared universe. The beauty of it is that you're gifted and spoiled with the fact that you're already aware of these characters, right? So you get more fun dynamics that you don't need to worry too much about. Like, let's introduce this character. If Black Panther on its own didn't exist in the MCU, it's a great movie. But I think under MCU standards and everything, I tend to be like, it's overrated, which I know can get a lot of fire because it's like, this is a cultural impactful movie. It is, but in context of an MCU movie, I'm like, I get too much exposition where I feel like this one, I see Wakanda in involvement with, if you've seen the trailers, Namor, who is a leader of a different country or nation. And country is too specific. It's not regional based, which actually I think is very interesting. And I would go into that in the spoiler section. But he is the ruler of the ocean, kind of. I wanted to always say Atlantis, but this actually doesn't refer to it as Atlantis. They went more for a national, like, representation of another, minority, which makes sense. Minority, I think, is not the appropriate word for it, because I think in a certain sense we all have a certain amount of one nation, but a nation that maybe needs more representation, if which is Mayan, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm so sorry if I did get that wrong. But Central America, and not like Spanish, Spanish acquisition, like influence, like none of that, as in like just Central America, which is cool. It's very cool to see that adoption, because I think it's smart. If you really look at Namor's origins, he doesn't really pertain to anybody, so it's really cool to actually give him some flavor. And I don't mean that in a in a very, what's the word, modern sense of like, oh, because he's colored, he's flavored. Like, no, I don't mean that in like ethnicity adds like personality. It doesn't. I'm saying he literally has some origin to him, which I think gives the character much more depth, which is very important when I'm looking at Namor in the context that he was just a dude with wings and on his ankles. I'm like, okay, because he's a mutant. Cool. He does have the wings, which I don't know if that showed up in the trailer, so I hope that wasn't a spoiler, but he does have the wings. So they go into that. I'm not going to go into why, yada yada, because that goes into the plot, and we don't need to worry about that. But my point is, having Namor in a whole nother nation, and then also the dynamic that T'Challa, he opened up the borders in Wakanda in the first movie, and the issues that arise from that, but then also the issues of you lost your leader. There's two things here that I think Coogler had a lot to juggle with in terms of making a story, and I think he actually did a really, really good job. I had some people say that it kind of replays the same things as what the first movie does, but I think it makes sense under the context of who learned the lesson in the first movie and who's not present in the second movie and didn't learn the lesson. And, like what I'm trying to say is whoever was in the first movie, not everybody learned the same lesson in the first movie. And then in the second movie, the people who didn't learn a lesson are not there. And the people who haven't learned that lesson were there and had to figure out how to manage the country in that context. So it was really cool to see the juggling. Even though I think, yes, I can see the repetition there, it's done in a much more favorable sense for me, because I get to see Wakanda not just, oh, we're going to have exposition. Wakanda has these nations that fight within each other. Therefore, the internal struggles are supposed to be the narrative. But I thought, aside from how cool the villain was, like Killmonger was so sick, and Michael B. Jordan did a great performance, and the depth between the colonialism and the problems with that, and the fact of unity between African culture, both North American and actual homeland Africa, coming in and being able to like support each other was very important as a message. But I think in terms of how much we're exploring the characters and Wakanda in terms of getting them involved with the MCU, I thought was underwhelming. This movie does rid of that because they add a whole nother nation. Not just that, but they involve the rest of the world. aka the West, which sucks. Like, and I say the West, not just America, but I mean Europe and stuff, and United Nations and all that. Well, in real life, I'm not narrating that. I'm talking about in the context of the MCU, where you have these fictional nations that are kind of like utopias, and how those react to realistic real world representation of our world, and how there's those struggles there. So now with Wakanda Forever, there's two of those, and then balancing that, it just becomes very cool. But there's there's a good dynamic there. So I thought that this movie for me was more favorable on that. In terms of the pacing, I think the pacing on this is actually pretty good. Yeah, no, pretty good. I think if I compared it to the first one, they're kind of similar. No, I'd say they're pretty similar. They do around the same things in terms of pacing. Yeah, so I'll give them both, and it's good pacing, by the way. It's good pacing. They do really good jobs on the pacing. I kept trying to think to myself, is the beginning dry on the first one? Not really, because then, T'Challa has his fun, and you get comfortable with Wakanda and everything. So I think, yeah, no, the pacing's good on both. And I don't know, I think character growth is good on both. I think there's actually more depth within our characters in the second one than there is in the first one, which I think goes more into what I said about I had issues with the first one, is that it was a little dry, just because it was kind of supposed to be, because you didn't have room to really go that deep. They had some depth, but not deep enough in some angles. And that makes sense. That makes 100% sense, because you're introducing them for the first time. How are you going to get that deep? We're not attached to them yet. So the second one got really deep with a lot of them and changed them for the better in a lot of ways. Not that they were bad at the beginning, but it just shows that they changed and they grew, especially with the loss of their king. Things, you got to grow. You got to change as a person. The nation changes, leaders change, and dynamics change. And that, there's a lot of that. But ironically, the enemy nation, which is Namor and his people, they also kind of have to understand the same problems that Wakanda went through at the beginning. But it's interesting to see how they take it versus Wakanda. And it's cool to see how Wakandians, that's what they're called, right? Wakandians, how they look at these sea people, right? Because they're just... I don't think it's said in the trailer, so I'm not going to talk about it. But there's a lot of things about the sea people. Namorians, I think is what they're called. I'm not sure, because I think Namor's a whole different person. Namor named himself, so I'm not 100% sure what their people are called. I kept missing it because there was a lot of terms being thrown around. I'll just state, it's a little hard to indicate what his region is called. They're mostly sea people. They're not called that, but I'm just sorry. They're kind of like nomads in a way. Like, they move around a lot, which makes sense because they habitat like 74% of the Earth's surface. But basically, my point is the Wakandians' reaction to them is crazy. They're just like, what the hell? Like, we thought we were special. These people were different. And when I say different, I mean challenging. As in, Wakandians, it's not like, oh, they're just sea people. No. They're sea people with stuff that make Wakanda feel threatened. The same way that the rest of the world might feel threatened by Wakanda, which brings perspective. But not in the way that I'm saying, like, they start to relate with the rest of the world. No, but they understand it, and they understand that they're not as impervious as they thought they were. And it grows, it helps Wakanda grow, which is why I think Wakanda Forever makes a lot of sense as a title when you think about it. But yeah, without going too deep in the plot, that's basically everything I wanted to say in terms of non-spoiler. Like I said, I prefer this one over Black Panther. But again, I don't want that to take away from the first movie. I think the first movie is great. I'd give it, like, objectively, and I mean this without, putting other things into factor, I think it's like an 8.2, 8.4. Like, it's a really, really good movie. But it's just, when I put it under the context of the MCU, I'm like, it's not fair. It's not fair, because I think it just ends up feeling dry. Because I'm like, well, you're not as good as other MCU movies for me, because I just don't feel like I got enough from the characters. but that's because the characters, I just got introduced to them, and I think this made me appreciate the first movie a lot more. That's another thing I want to mention. Watching this, you'll love the first movie more, but I still think I like this movie more than the first one because this movie made me feel that way about the first movie. I still don't know 100% after watching the second movie, this sequel, if I think there's going to be a third movie. I said that as a joke at the beginning. I think it could go either way. Probably not. But I can see there's a plot point that could go to a third movie, but I question if that's actually going to be necessary for a third movie, or you could just explore that throughout the MCU films. Regardless, go watch this movie. It's really, really good. That's all I have to say. I'm going to get into spoilers, which will be fast. I'll try to make them like 5 to 8 minutes. Anyways, go watch the movie. Enjoy yourself. I want to talk about spoilers. I hope you enjoy yourself. Bye. Okay. Now let's jump into spoilers. Namor himself, I don't think he changed from Shuri. Okay, I'll say this. Namor's development, I don't think I'm 100% sold on it in terms of he went from someone who is willing to open himself to making, compromise, like going from someone that sees black or white to someone that can make a compromise. I think it's a little soft soul to me because I don't think that's a term, but I just don't think he's as I don't think his intentions have changed that much, which I think is pretty obvious, but just in case if anyone thinks that he may have turned a new leaf, I don't think so. I think he'll still play mostly a villain for the most part. That's kind of how Namor works in the comics, which I was glad when I saw that. The way the mechanic worked for how they travel and the look of it, of like when they're coming out of the sea, the blue aesthetic of them was very interesting. It gave me Avatar vibes, especially with the new movie the sequel being called Way of Water. It gave me heavy Avatar vibes, and I was like, James Cameron is gonna sue Marvel after this. But it was good. It was really, really good. Their language, I really, really loved when there was this exchange between the cultures. Like you can see like warrior versus warrior and ruler versus ruler, like these conversations of like them kind of battling within their own culture and seeing like they look at things differently, but they're also both traditional in a sense. And then you have Riri Williams, who is Ironheart. I didn't know if that was in the trailer, so I didn't want to talk about it in the non-spoiler section. But in the spoiler section, she's American. And I thought it was super funny when you see the interaction between how she looks at like them and Wakanda, but then she can relate to Wakanda because she understands Wakanda, and she might have, a bigger tie to Wakanda than these, sea people. Again, I forget their name because they just kind of said a bunch of different nationalities, and I realized they have nations within them. When I say nationalities, I don't mean like they have their own nations, kind of how Wakanda has their own tribes, I'm like, oh, like this now I don't know what they're called. Like, are they Nemorians or something else, So, but I just thought, and M'Baku was so good, by the way. He was so good. It changed so quickly, and when he said like, I promised your brother I would be an advisor to you and help you, I thought it made sense. I was like, you know what? I'm buying into this. But I think my favorite part with him wasn't when he was talking to Shuri about like, you gotta not want eternal war for our people. You gotta look at this from how your brother might have seen it. That wasn't my favorite part, although that part was amazing. My favorite part was when he analyzed why that would be the case to reach eternal war. He knew based on reading books, which is so impressive. Like it just threw me off. I was like, this is good. I like that, like he's proving, because he's my favorite character. I was like, I'm so happy that he's proving that like I'm educated. I know this stuff. Like he's like, I can understand these people and their culture. He said they're referring to him not by a king, but by a god's name. Like as in they refer to him as a god. He said if these people lose their leader, like we lost ours, they're not reacting the same way we will. They will react worse. And he's like, we can't afford that kind of stuff. So I thought it was very, very insightful on his part. But obviously Shuri went through the most. of development. I thought it was so cool that she saw Killmonger. It made sense considering she wanted revenge. I think it was smart because you have Michael B. Jordan. You can bring him back, but you did it in a right way. You did it in a way that made sense. It wasn't like we're gonna bring him back just for the sake of at least we have that actor. It's like, no, you brought him back because of course she's gonna see him. She wants revenge. Her mother dying, I think, made sense. It was kind of really sweet to think that I was so curious when she died. I was like, wait, she wanted to tell her something. Obviously, we see, if you didn't see, there was a mid-credit scene. You got to see it. Go see it and then come back. So leave right now and then go see it. Okay, you saw it? Good. Knowing that, like, she has a grandson, you know, that her son, it was interesting to see, like, when she met, I totally forgot her name, but T'Challa's baby mama. I don't know if they got married. I don't think they did. But his baby mama is his wifey. You know, I don't know. What do you want to call her? But when she met up with her in Haiti, how do you pronounce it? Haiti? Yeah. When she met up with her, it was very interesting to me. I was like, wait, what? Why are you not more frustrated at this woman? Because I thought the explanation she was giving made sense, but they were missing some context. I was like, I don't know if I'd buy this that much. It made sense when you find out, oh, they did have a mourning and everything. And then I thought back to when she said, I didn't want to be there because it would feel so final. And when she was talking about it, like, she was talking about T'Challa, like, oh, everyone saw him as the king or Black Panther. He was everything to me. And I'm thinking, well, if he was everything to you and you were so worried about it being final, it just seems to me you never saw him. You know, you never met him enough again after, like, she talked about when Thanos snapped and everything. I just couldn't bring myself to come back. And I was like, there's some things missing here that I'm just not realizing. And then when we saw his son or her son, their son, it made sense to me. I was like, oh, this makes sense. I also thought it was so sweet. It hit me in a really deep part of my soul when his son mentioned that he actually talked to his father. T'Challa and him, like, he's a 6-year-old, I'm pretty sure. So T'Challa, and right after the first film, they probably had a child. So good on that, you know, and just making. I know it's sad. It's not fair that, like, having that kid in this movie makes the passing easier, but it kind of does in context to Black Panther, not Chadwick. This is still fiction, all right? It doesn't take away from, like, the grief you can feel from losing a real person, but I will say in context of knowing that T'Challa is no longer going to be there as T'Challa that we know, because the multiverse exists, and I'm well aware that there could be another T'Challa, but it's not going to be Chadwick, which is not my T'Challa, so you get the point. But there can be another T'Challa. I get that. But being able to move on from that, it's not fair that it's easier the fact that he had a kid. I didn't try to make it affect me when I saw it, but I couldn't help it, man. Because it made, I think it was smart. It was very, very good that they didn't even put it at the end. They put it at the post-credit, like, not like the mid-credit scene. It was so good that they did that, because I think it would have destroyed and taken away from all the, like, impact that he has from his loss. Like, the loss of him is felt throughout the entire movie. But it was really smart. It was really smart how they used it. I know I talked about Riri Williams a little bit briefly, and I kind of ranted about this. I just want to make it very clear when I was talking about the American thing. I thought it was very interesting when I said her reactions to the different nations. It was in a very American way. Like, she was very not like, I love her comparison to Shiri, where one is looking at it more traditionally, like she's appreciating the tradition and the customs and the beauty of this new nation, while the Americans, like, holy shit, I've been captured, I'm gonna die, these guys are crazy, you know. I think I'm not trying to make this too, like, what's the word, like, I'm trying to appreciate this as a comic fan and as a movie fan, but not make this too, like, oh, there's a message behind a lot of things. But there is kind of a narrative there that I think is important. It's like, I think with a lot of us Western, I'm included. If you go overseas to like, and when I say overseas, I mean like literal overseas. Like you go to cultures like in South America or in the Middle East or in Asia, like different parts of Asia, not industrialized Asia or Africa, you're gonna see parts of just culture. Like, and when I say culture, I mean not in the woke sense of like, oh, we're so cultured. Like, no, 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 no. I mean, in general, like these people live in almost what seems like a whole different world, but in a beautiful way. Obviously, you don't have great Wi-Fi. So I mean, damn, you don't have great internet. That sucks, and it does suck. It really does suck. Believe me, it sucks. But take away from that, the beauty comes in. You feel like you're living the world in a whole different way, which I think that's why I love this movie, and I think when I said this to some other people, they didn't really understand why I like this movie more than the first one because they really love the first one. But I think I love this movie personally, subjectively. This is for me. I like this movie a lot more because of that. Because I can see through Shuri the struggles that I think, the struggles, but also the appreciation that I think I also feel within myself sometimes, where I'm like, the way you kind of get to certain conclusions, like she gets to when she loses someone, running off her emotions and seeing like, I don't want to just follow the example of how people I respect and love would want me to be, but also I can't help but feel that, like I understand they would want me to be one way, but I can't help but feel the way I do. She embraces that she wants revenge and she does, but I mean, she almost dies. So at that point, she's, kind of realized like near death. And I think that's good. Like, that's why I'm saying where I can kind of relate more with Shuri than I can with T'Challa, even though I love T'Challa's character. I think I can relate with her way more personally because she died almost. And I think in moments like that where you really get hit hard, like it's okay to be mad. It's okay to want revenge. It's okay to do all that. But understanding that there's a certain point where you're going to realize it's wrong. It's wrong. But you will eventually experience like, okay, reality is hit. You know what I mean? And not saying like, okay, Shuri, I was not frustrated at all when she wanted revenge. But when she got hit through the chest with a spear, she got stabbed right through, clean through, and she was dying. That clairvoyance, I don't think it's because, oh, her mom said it. I think it generally she could feel this is what death is like. This is what pain is like. This is life. Like she can see her life flash before her eyes and she can appreciate every breath she's trying to take to survive. She's realizing what it really means to try and kill someone. And like being like, okay, this is why mercy can be a good thing. Because otherwise, it's not just him I'm killing. It's his people, it's my people, it's violence, it's war. For what? For what? You know what I mean? So then she can really get that and it hits home for her, but then still understanding, I still miss my brother. I can't get over it even after I went through the customs and everything. And she's modernized, not in like T'Challa, who's very traditional. He fits the goal as the eldest sibling, everything. He embraces his tradition. Shuri is much more modernized and her kind of transitioning to this. I thought, well, I love T'Challa and he'll always be my favorite Black Panther. I think Shuri I don't know, she brought something out of me where I was like, I can really relate a lot. But I just, after this movie, man, I gotta see Black Panther again. I gotta watch T'Challa again. And I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him a lot. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I think I may have missed some things, but I'm gonna leave it with that. Honestly, and I think this movie made me happy. This movie made me really happy, and I think that's another reason why I love it is that I love it more than the first one. Is that while the first one is very impactful and has a good message and everything, I think the second one does the same thing, but it makes me happier. It makes me happier, in ways that I just think the first one didn't do. Which, yeah, I think that's a human thing, man. That's pretty fair. So if you think differently, go ahead. I don't, that's fine with me. But it made me really happy. This movie made me very happy. I don't think I've been this happy from an MCU movie in a long time. And that's not saying they're bad. They're not. Oh no, they're not. But it's just, I don't know. It gives me the same feelings that I used to have about like what was a good character example? Captain America. Captain America, you know, he's a good example. Well, Peter Parker's a sweet guy, you know, but Captain America, you know, the wholesome way of like, you know, I could do this all day, but in a very like heroic and good-willed, you know, pure-hearted sense. Sure, but I think this is much more realistic. You know what I mean? Like this movie hits in so many good ways, so many good ways, but in sad ways, but good ways. And I don't think it's bittersweet. I don't think it's bittersweet. I think while it is technically, I don't think it feels more bitter than it does sweet. I think for the first time I can say bittersweet. It actually is sweeter than it is bitter. I think Ryan Coogler did a really good job in making this film have me be able to accept, you know, what you know, just things outside of just the passing of Chadwick Boseman, but also just a lot of things. And I'm like, that's good. That's good. If anything, a movie that makes me feel like this, I can't help but give it like at least like, you know, I'm not even gonna give it a rating. It deserves more than that. You know, it's just a good movie. It's a really good movie, and I'd happily watch it again. I will say one thing, not to be super sappy, but I will end it off with this. It was really dark in the ocean parts. Can we make me like, I understand it's the ocean, but it was really dark and hard to see some things. So when was I the only one that when Namor added the light, like he was like, I brought the sun to my people, I was like, thank God I can see what's happening. I was like, Shari, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, I'm like, there's lots of darkness here. I'm like, I can barely make out what's going on. Anyways, I just thought it funny to say it, but it was something I was thinking. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, leave a like down below. Smash up the sub button if you want to keep seeing more of this stuff. And let me know down below what you liked about this movie. I think it was really, really good. I'm so sorry. This is half an hour again. I gotta stop making these half an hour. I keep going for like 20 minutes, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. What can I say? But yeah, I hope you guys do well, like in life, because I mean, this movie, it made me a little sappy a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's great. So I'm just gonna leave it with that, I guess. I don't know how to end this off. I'll see you guys in the next MCU review thing I might do. It might not be a review. I might do something else instead. So I'll come up with something. I have ideas. It might not, my MCU comic stuff won't always just be this. It'll probably be like outside of just the movies. I'll be talking about like the movies in different ways, like maybe a tier list or something. I'll come up with something. But yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll leave you guys off with that. I'll catch you guys later. Take care, peace, and goodbye.